So as we finished up last time, our player was able to collect an item, and we keep score of that item. Can move back and forth. If I run into an enemy, I have a little bit of a flashing behavior. I go over here, collect these items, stomp on that enemy, and there really is no end to this game or tutorial. So that's what we're going to cover in this video, is that we're going to add a little bit extra flair. What happens if you run into the enemy? You have a flashing effect, but shouldn't the player die and then give the player a chance to restart the level? What happens if the player falls off a level? How do we actually restart the level? And then also give the player something to reach. So we're going to add a little bit of flair to our game here. So here on the player is that I'm going to go into the player animation. And we have an idle, run, jump, and fall. Let's add a death or a dead animation. So I'm going to add an animation. Now, some of the animation graphics that you may find may not have this graphic, so you may need to look at a different scenario, but this case, this set of graphics has a character that we can put into this spot here. And I'm going to go ahead and just call this dead. I'm going to go to the folder. I'm going to go back up to our PNG, into our player. We're on the blue, not the green. The green, but the blue. And here we have it. We have a dead. And this is where this character has the feet opened up and X's over the eyes. So this is a good graphic to use. Again, all of the other animations, we have the origin set to bottom. So here on dead, I'm also going to place the origin to bottom. So make sure that you're on the origin tool. If you're not, go down to the origin tool on the left hand side, go to origin, right click, quick assign, and then go to bottom. So that way that animation as well has that graphic. Okay, so how can we set this up? So in our event sheet is that when we are on collision with that enemy, and on the else condition, so if we're not falling on the enemy, but we're walking into the enemy, we just had the flashing behavior. But we'll keep the flashing behavior, and then we're gonna have a delay, and then we'll set the other animation. So here, the player hits the enemy, but instead of allowing the player to continue moving, let's stop the player from moving. So I'm gonna add an action. I'm gonna go on the player box here, and I'm going to go to next. I'm going to go down to the platform behaviors, and they have this enabled. The enabled allows you to use the behaviors. Well, I want to disable the behaviors so you cannot use it. So set enabled, and then next. And I'm going to make sure that I choose disabled. That'll prevent the player from moving anymore. So if I ran into the enemy, I want to stop moving. I'm going to go to done, and I'm going to put this first. So as you run into the enemy, I'm going to disable the player from moving. I'm going to flash. I'm flashing for 1 second. Once the 1 second is over, I want to change animation. But I want to change animation once I've waited. So I'm going to have to put a wait here for a second before it changes animation. Because if I just change animation, let's just do this so you can see this in action. Add action on the player anim, and then I'm going to set animation. On my double quotes, I'm going to remove the double quotes, put the first one back in. I'm going to choose dead. And done. And so if I leave this here for a moment, let's take a look and see what's happening here. The player can move. There's my enemy. I'm going to run into the enemy. I've stopped. I can't move anymore. The player was flashing, but it automatically went right to the dead animation pretty quickly. And also the player is behind the enemy. Let's fix that as well. So I'm going to pick my game is locked. So if you had that layer locked, unlock it so you can select your object. And then I'm going to right click. I'm going to go to Z order. And I'm going to send to top of layer. That's one way to do it. The other way to do it is that in the event sheet, We could create a vent at the start of the layout to make sure that it's at the very top, but that's adding extra events that we may not have access to, and right now we're coming close to our free limit. So I'm going to go ahead and save that for another day. So this is on top. So I'm going to go ahead and run into that enemy again, and I'm out in front of the enemy. I hit the enemy, I flashed, and I went right into the death right away. Now, if you like that, great. But if you want to have a little bit extra delay, I'm going to add, actually, I'm going to change it like a half a second. So I'm going to add an action here on the system, all the way at the bottom. I'm going to wait. And I'm going to wait 0.5 seconds. And I'll put this between. So the player hits the enemy, stops moving, starts to flash for a second, but while it's flashing for a second, I'm going to wait a half a second and then go to my dead animation. And there it is. That looks pretty good. Now, you can always tweak that and happen much quicker or not, but if that player does in fact become dead, let's go ahead and restart the layout. So then after it has that, I don't want it to restart right away. So again, I'm going to add a wait. So system, I'm going to go down to the wait at the very bottom. And then after the animation changes, I'm going to wait an additional half a second here. And then I'm going to add action on the system. I'm going to scroll down to the layout section, and I want to restart the layout. And then next. And then we can take a look at this. So right now, let me go ahead and collect a gem. So I've collected a gem. I got 10 points. There's my walking enemy. And I'm going to let the walking enemy come to me for a moment. So I'm going to move back. I'll wait right here. The walking enemy hits me. I flash. I'm dead. And then I happen. That was half a second. That was pretty quick. So I'm going to fix that. So probably go a second and a half. But look here. My score value has stayed the same at that 10. It didn't go back to 0. Now, if I was to close out here and preview again, it goes back to 0. But if I grab my 10, or if I get the diamond here, but I hit this one, it's back at 20. So if you want this to go back to 0 on when the player dies, we need to actually put this into the event sheet. So in the event sheet here, so this is when the player is running into the enemy. I like the half a second here before the animation. The wait is too fast. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to edit, and I'm going to change this to a 1.5 seconds wait time. And then just before it restarts the layout, I'm going to add an action on the system, and I'm going to go to set value underneath the global and local set value. And I'm going to set the score back to 0. I'm going to put this just above, like so it happens before the restart. Let's take a look at this. So now our score is 0. I'm going to jump collect. I got 10 points. I run into the enemy, have a flashing. I get restart back to 0 on my score. What I could do is that the enemy was still walking and it ran into me again. I could spend more time customizing and making all the enemies stop, or make myself not collidable anymore. There's a lot of things that we could customize as we go, but for right now, I think that's pretty good. So if I run into the enemy here, flashing, I'm dead, wait, then restart the level itself. Okay, so that looks okay here for the enemy. What happens if the player falls off the level? Now, they have a thing here where we can check for the player if it's outside the layout. So if I go on the player box, and here for size and position, they have is outside of layout. And what this means is outside the boundary. And that's all 4 sides. So for instance, that makes sense, right? If the player is out down here, it's out of bounds, or maybe over here, but it also could be up here. So if you have a very tall jump on your player and you jump past the layout, it'll restart the layout. So what we might want to do is just check that if the player gets too far on the Y, then we're going to go ahead and reset. So I'm going to go down to add an event. This will be on my player box, and I'm going to compare Y. So I'm going to scroll all the way down, and I want to compare the Y value. So again, in Construct, the numbers go positive downward from the top left corner. So the player is going to be when the player's Y is greater than. And so here, I could put a value if I know what this is, but they have a value for the layout height. If I type out layout, they have a layout height variable that's keeping track of how tall the layout is. And then I'm going to add 64, the size of the character. So if I'm outside the layout, plus 64, so that way I'm definitely below the scene and I can't see my player anymore. Can't do this twice, so I'm going to back that up like so. Make sure it says layout height plus 64, or you can even just do layout height as well. That will still work here. And then if that's the case, then I want to restart my layout. One other cool little technique is that I could go add action, find the restart, or I can do a control or command, click and drag to make a copy of that as well. So that's a little hint there. So here I'm going to collect my 10. I'm going to fall. I restarted the layout, but I still have that 10. I'm going to need to reset my count. So right here for the score is 0. Control, click or control or command, click and drag down. I'm going to restart the score as well. So I'm going to collect, say 10 there, and maybe I collect 10 there, and then 30, but I missed the jump here. Oh, I fall off the level. I've set my score back to 0, and I'm back at the very beginning. Now again, that's a personal preference when it comes time to resetting the score there. One other cool thing is that, like in Mario Brothers, when the Mario stomped on the enemies, it gave Mario some extra points towards its value. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. So I'm going to go ahead and make sure I have the game layer selected. And then I'm going to right click. I'm going to insert a new object. This will be a text object. And I'm going to call this plus 10. So I'm going to give, so I have 10 points for the collectibles, and I'm going to give 10 more points on stomping on enemies. I'm going to call this txt text plus 10. And I'm going to put it up here. And I'll put this up here at the very top. I'm going to zoom in, and I'm going to fix this. So I'm going to find this brown here. So this is, I'm going to go ahead and copy that value, and I'm going to paste that value. So it's the same brown color. It was also 26 on this. I'm not gonna do that size. That was too. I'm gonna go 18 instead. And so this will be plus 10. And then I'm gonna change the center, and I'm gonna center this. And I'm gonna make this just big enough that there we go. So this will show up whenever the player runs into a collectible or an enemy. The origin is off, so I'm going to fix the origin. Make sure the origin center. This will help when it gets created. And so I'm going to create an image point that these objects will in fact put off when they collect that item. I could spawn it at the origin, but I'm going to spawn it above. So I'm going to go over here to my objects, and I'm going to double click on my collectible. I'm going to zoom out, and I'm going to go make sure you're on the image point. So if you're not there, go down to image point, and you can add additional image points here. So I'm going to right click, add image point, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to rename this one to plus 10, and I'm going to put this just above like so. And then I'm going to do the same thing for the enemy. Double click on the enemy. I'm going to zoom out. I'm going to right click, add a point, rename it to plus 10. I'm going to put this just above the enemy. Now I need to make sure it's on both animations, because if you stomp on the enemy and it's in this frame, that image point will not exist. So over here on plus 10, I'm going to right click and I'm going to apply the whole animation. Okay, that's the creation point. So on the event sheet, that if my player is on collision with the collectible, I'm going to add an action on the collectible. The collectible wants to spawn an object. So under miscellaneous, I can spawn another object. Well, what object do I want to spawn? Or spawning is another word for creating. So I want to create the plus 10. And I want to create this. Well, which layer? Over here, layer 0 is the game. So that's correct. But what image point? I want to go to image point number 1, or you can put it in the double quotes if you remember what the name of the image point is. If not, just remember what that image point number was, which was number 1. And then I'm going to say done. So it'll add 10. You can see that. I want to have this, so it's going to add the points, but it's also going to create this. And let's verify this. That when I jump and I collect the diamond, it'll spawn this. And then I also want this to fade away. I don't want it to stay there. So I'm going to add a behavior on that. And I'm going to add the fade behavior. It'll fade out over time. And when it fades out, it wants to destroy. So I'm going to make sure that this is enabled or disabled. So if I leave these settings alone for a moment, let's verify and see what's happening here. I'm going to jump up. I'm going to run into the collectible. It had the 10. It showed the 10. It kind of was hidden there. So let's go with this one here. There's that plus 10. Fades away. And then I've got plus 10 there. It fades away. Perfect. So it's happening. I can collect the collectibles, and then I get the little plus 10, so it knows how many points are happening per collectible. Let's do the same thing for the enemies now. So here on event number 11, when I am on collision with the enemy and I'm falling, this is when I destroyed the enemy. Let's add those 10 points. And so we've already done this down here. Let's make copies of these. But this one, it doesn't want to have the gem collected, so we're going to fix that. So I'm going to go ahead and do a control or command, select those two, click, and I'm going to drag this all the way up right there. But I don't, this is the wrong object to be spawning. I'm going to right click, I can edit, and so this is on the collectible, or if I back up, I can replace object, and I want to replace the collectible with the enemy. So now here, if the player stomps on the enemy, that enemy is gonna produce that plus 10 text, add 10 more points to the score. Let's verify this. So I'm gonna go up here, collect my gem there. Oh, so I accidentally moved the information. Let's verify. So down here, I've removed those. I accidentally took these off from down here. So let's just go and add them back real quick. System, I'm going to add 2. I'm going to add 10 to the score. Add that first. I'm going to add action on the collectible. I'm going to go to miscellaneous. I'm going to spawn another object. I want to spawn the plus 10 text. Layer is 0, image point is number 1. I'm going to make this happen first. Let's verify now. So, collect the gem, 10. If I stomp on the enemy, I got 10 more, so now I have 20. Collect the gem, that's 30. There's 40, 50. So now I'm getting 10 points per collectible, as well as jumping on the enemy plus 10. There you go. So now we got some collectibles. And if I run up the level, I die and start over. And the last thing is that there is no endpoint to this level. Let's go ahead and add an endpoint to kind of wrap this up. So I'm going to make sure I'm on the game layer, and I'm going to lock the HUD. Right click, I'm going to insert a new object. I'm going to go to a sprite object, and we'll call this, we can call it endpoint, and because you may not know what kind of graphic it is. I'm going to insert, I'm going to go to the folder, and I'm going to go to the items folder and see what we have to work with. Not items folder. All right, so they have a flag, a red flag or a green flag. Ah, nice. So we have two different graphics here. So I'm going to select both of these. So we have one when it's down and one when it's up. And so what I want to do now is that I want to turn this speed to 0, so that way it doesn't go from here to here right away. So it'll be in this position. I'm also going to make sure that the image point, the origin image point, is at the same spot. When you look at both of these, they both have the graphic in that bottom right hand corner. So I'm going to apply, I'm going to go bottom left corner. I want to apply to whole animation so they both are in the same position. I'll put that there. And then I can have an extra event here that if the player's box is on collision with another object, I want to go ahead and collide with that endpoint. And when the player collides with the endpoint, I want to transition into that animation. So the endpoint, and we could set the animation. We can also set the frame number. There was a 0 and a 1. I want it to go to the number 1 frame. So I'm going to set frame to frame number 1. And then what we can do there is that once the player reaches the flag, it transitions the flag. I could have a simple wait delay here. So wait, and I'm going to wait 1.5 seconds. And then I'll just restart the level with the system. And then I want to go to restart layout. And let's verify this. I have some collectibles, 10. Move along. There's my flag. If I run into the flag opens up, and then there we have it. Game starts over, and the player can play again. So there we have an actual working game. We looked at wrapping up the tutorial from Construct on their platformer series. We spent time adding a little bit of extra flair to our game, and now you're ready to go and test your knowledge. Thanks for watching.